Matt, in terms of, I asked Tom about this, and he said, you got to get more players to play on defense just because, nature of the game, the snap count was higher, but 80-plus snaps, too many guys. What's the how does that not happen? What's is that a function of not, each guy being in charge of their own position to kind of send guys in? How does that happen kind of in the game where, maybe you guys have too many players playing 80-plus snaps?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. So at first it starts with players earning the right to play right from a practice standpoint. We've had a number of guys do that. And then it's from a coaching standpoint saying, okay, I'm going to commit to, pre-planned rotation no matter what happens game flow wise, right? So what happens sometimes is a game's tight and you leave one guy in there for too many snaps, because it's a one-score game. But, yeah, we have to commit as a staff. We talked about it a lot, but there's guys who have earned the right to play and need to be in there for sure.
Morning, Coach. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hey, I want to get your thoughts on Tagovailoa, especially. He turned 23 in February. He's not only an experienced guy, but he's an older guy. How does his experience and just overall physical maturity impact the number of things he can do on a Saturday?
For sure. I think experience, familiarity with a system, and then has seen a lot of different defenses too. So that I think guys are harder to rattle, when guys have played a lot of snaps from that standpoint. But a really talented guy, he can throw it, he can run it. He's off schedule scrambling. He can do a bunch of really, really good things, So regardless of how old, young from there, he is a really talented football player that has played a lot of snaps.
Matt, when you came to assess the issues with Irons being able to be as productive as he was out running the ball, what diagnosis did you come up with and what fix, and how do you apply it, though, to the next quarterback with when Tagovailoa can keep the unlike Irons, he can keep the play alive with his feet behind the line of scrimmage,
sure.
which is a different element. How do you kind of apply that lesson?
For sure. So it starts with design, right? So what's the intention of a game plan going in, and what is the amount of pressure and risk involved at times versus not, right? So that's as a staff, we talk about that, right? So if you look at from the game, there were times that we took calculated risks to create pressure and it resulted in takeaways. There's times that we did that as well, and we weren't as disciplined as we needed to from a rush lane standpoint, right? And then you don't have eyes on him from there. So I always take full responsibility for everything, right? What's the design, and then how well is it executed to get the result that you want, And we know we've got a big challenge on our hands this week from a quarterback that can create off schedule, and he can run the ball, he can throw the ball, and then he can do both those things, when it all breaks down. So, we have to be really disciplined with the way that we're containing the quarterback for sure.
On your right, and Zach.
So obviously late in the game, Lorenzo Lingard rips off that 71-yard run that happened in the game. So kind of a two-part question. Just first, what kind of specifically happened on that play where he was able to break that in this 2 weeks in a row where defense played pretty well, but had a few problems with explosive plays. Jamari Thrash against Louisville, Lingard against Akron. So what can you do to kind of just solve that issue?
Yeah, for sure. That can't happen in that situation. 17-10, 4 minutes left, right? With your defense out there expected to get a stop. We were in a one-gap control defense, and we lost a gap, and we weren't able to get the ball on the ground. So that's, simply put, that's what happened, right? So when you're in those one-gap control defenses, everybody has a responsibility to do their job. And if it does break through, then that's when you have secondary pieces to be able to down the ball, and we obviously did not do that in that situation. So we address it head on, and we make sure it doesn't happen.
You got two guys in Andre and Aaron that I think are tied for the lead in tackles for loss in the Big Ten through the first 4 weeks. I recognize that there's an extent to which you would have expected that. You've seen them through the offseason. But what opens up, maybe what needs to open up defensively, especially as you get back into Big Ten play when you've got guys that can be that disruptive for the wider scheme?
For sure, yeah. It's about players, not plays, right? So you could say, hey, I got this scheme, I really like it, whatever, but it's got to fit those pieces, right? So you have disruptive players in Andre and Ace, and it's our job to put those guys in position to be able to utilize their skills, right? So that's the first thing for me is, okay, what do the pieces do best? And we're trying to design, each week to that way. So I think we've been successful. Obviously, the numbers would say that from a standpoint of trying to get those guys activated, but continuing that, and based on what you're getting each week too, but saying, hey, these are these guys' talents. Let's make sure we can cut these guys loose.
Yeah, Matt, when you look at the Lou Moore and the way he's played, progressed, coming from a receiver background initially to now, assess the way he's played, and what do you see the ceiling with him?
Yeah, you saw the receiver skills, obviously, right? The ability to go get the ball and then the return capability, And Lou, to me, from my initial time here, was not a starter in the defense, right? And continued to earn that over time, And to me has been a guy that's been on the rise, and I expect him to play the way that he's playing and improve in the areas that he needs to improve as well.
Yeah, similar subject with Phillip. Sorry, leads the league in interceptions right now. Currently, I'm curious your initial reaction upon meeting him. March, April, kind of throughout the entire spring, and then how would you kind of evaluate his, first 4 weeks so far?
For sure, yeah. So the first thing is you meet these guys, you're able to watch the film that you have and the talent. You can see the talent, right? He's got length, range, athleticism, ball skills. He has those things, right? What needed to improve, and I've said it before to you guys, right, is the consistency from that standpoint. And he's earned that. Again, not a guy that was a starter at first, right, and has earned that because he's been consistent at practice. So, like, if you talk about a Lou or you talk about a Phillip, like the performance doesn't surprise me because it's what happens at practice, right? So if there's a breakdown at practice, there's a breakdown of the game, right? If there's good things at practice, there's normally good things in the game. You know what I mean? So we can predict from that standpoint, but those guys have been productive on the football throughout camp, and those are probably the guys that have the most interceptions in, every one of our practices from our defense, right? And so that's happened in games.
Looking back to both the Louisville game and then Saturday as well, you mentioned that in the Louisville game there were some individual breakdowns that kind of brought down the entire unit. With a couple specifically in the defensive backfield facing a pass-heavy offense like Maryland has, what has the film shown as to why some of those breakdowns are happening and how can they be contained?
From our film?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think you have to be very objective and call everything out for exactly what it is with the guys. I try to be a truth teller in their life with everything. And you say, okay, the only way you have great defense is you have 11 pieces functioning as one. You're operating like a machine, right? Any breakdown, in a car and whatever it is, then it doesn't function as well as it can, right? So effort covers up some of those mistakes. There's mistakes on plays that look like successful plays, right? But there's effort and there's swarm to the football and mentality, and that can cover some of those things. But you can't have breakdowns. Every man has to be doing their job to the absolute best of their ability, and you call those things out. And then it's our job from a schematic standpoint, what we're asking guys to do. Hey, what's the functionality of that, right? So we take all the responsibility for every little bit of that. Trust me, it's never put on those guys. We're demanding of those guys, but we own it as a staff. And anything that happens, it's me. And I tell those guys on game day, they own their attitude and effort. I own every single one of those mistakes. If it happens, because we have to get them ready for the show, obviously. And so we call those out and we keep addressing it, and we keep getting better every single day in what we do.
Coach, with Andre specifically, as you think back to the player that you saw in the transfer portal in last winter, just is there anything that's kind of surprised you with what he's been able to produce so far this season?
No, to be honest with you, right? So you saw a disruptive guy. You saw a big physical guy. He was here before I was here, so I can't take any credit for any of that. That was a great job by Coach Allen and the defensive staff. But you saw a guy that to me is a special human being that cares. You guys know him from interviewing it, right? That was a special guy who's going to give you everything that he has, but is a big, strong dude between the white lines, right? So you've been able to see that, and you've seen the physicality and the negative plays that he's able to create. So no, it doesn't surprise me from there. And I think the biggest thing for us is, how we continue to put Dre or whoever is on our defense in the best position to be successful.